Hi, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. This podcast is called Be Heard, and we've had some podcasts in the past, and I was just putting under the heading of Raised with Wolves, Trapped by Demons because that was my first book. But since then, I've written two more books, and what the focus has been in our podcast seems to be about women and how we are more powerful than we know, and that a lot of us are survivors of something, many things, some of us, and we're warriors. So I think I'm going to officially change the podcast name to Being Heard or Be Heard because that's what we want. Okay. That out of the way, we have two authors here. One that has published, I'm having a little problem here, my words today. One who has published many books, another one that has not published but has written her book and is doing some work in editing, and then myself who has three books, but I am new to the field. So I'm going to start with Tashina. And Tashina Trudell, she is an author of many genres, including paranormal fantasy and romance. I love stories about werewolves and vampires and all that. So that's right up my alley. And she started writing right out of high school. And she's taken many different paths in her life, but she always landed right back in front of the keyboard. So finally she realized this is what I'm supposed to do. And she has a little family in the western part of the United States. And she loves spending all the time she can with them. And other than that, she's writing. So Tashina, I'm going to start with you, and maybe you can talk about the impetus for your first book that was quite popular. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Of course. So I'm Tashina Trudell, author. I'm also Talia Ambrose, an audiobook narrator, and I narrated Raised by Wolf, Trapped by Demons for Mimi. This is my book, Love of the Beast. It was first released about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, and had a pretty decent amount of hype on it. Unfortunately, and fortunately at the same time, started a family, and so it kind of broke off a little bit. So I've recently gone back to it, rewritten it, and re-released it. And the second book is going to be re-releasing in about maybe 1-2 more weeks. That was really my breakthrough on trying something different on my writing. Twilight was a very big thing at the time. And so I love werewolves, vampires, witches, magic, all that kind of, all that stuff in that genre. And so I thought, why don't I try doing something along the lines of that? And my story just kind of wrote itself. It just came out.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Your mind to create all these things. That just blows me away because I'm a non-fiction writer at this point. If I ever do write a fiction, it's probably going to be based on real people because I'm not good at making things up. But I will change their names.
Oh, right. Actually, I've always loved writing. I've loved reading. That was my escape because I came up from a rough childhood and I didn't want to be in that setting. So I used my reading to get away from it. And then I realized I've got things to say too. And so I wrote them. Awesome. And that was my escape.
Mine too. I grew up in a dysfunctional alcoholic home, the whole thing. And by just the goddess or whoever of the universe put a library right across the street from my house. The south side branch of the library was across the street. And in 7th grade, I had an English teacher, Mrs. Wilder, and she was fabulous. And she got you involved in the book. She had you act out scenes. She was my favorite teacher. Yeah. And like you, I would escape to my bedroom and read and read and read. And, to the point where like my father would come up and say, "You're up here too long, come down with the family." Oh, yeah, I don't want to be with the family. But, they would leave me alone for long periods of time because they knew I was smart and I was doing good in school. So yes, reading is absolutely the best thing anybody could get into.
Yep.
Now Carol's been a very good friend of mine from high school. At the time, in Scranton, we had a lot of kids going to parochial school, Catholic school, and then the rest of us were going to public school.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband, for instance, he was in parochial school. He was in a Catholic school, St. Mary's, I believe. And all of a sudden, in 8th grade, they got rid of the middle school for the kids, the Catholics. And they all came over then to public school. So I didn't know him until 8th grade, okay? But he was not in my group of friends or anything. Excuse me. And then we transferred to senior high school, and that's where I met Carol, because Carol was from North Scranton, right there.
I grew up in Green Ridge, but not the fancy places where Casey and Biden came from. I was in Lower Green Ridge, but it was nice. I mean, it was a nice neighborhood, but wasn't up there.
Yeah, me too. I understand that because we had the hill section, which now is like a ghetto for drug addicts. Back then, all the Jewish.
That's a shame.
It's the change. Yeah. All the Jewish people lived up there, and Scranton had a big Jewish population. They had a Jewish school, yeshiva, I think it's called, and they had all these people, and they all went to Central, which was the college prep school. And I chose to go to Central because delusionally I thought I was going to go to college, and that's where I met Carol. So I just gravitated towards her and her group of people. I just loved them. Yeah. I did.
They were a good group of people.
Oh, wow. If I didn't meet you guys. I mean, we played flag football. I remember doing that at Connie Petnako's house, remember? And then we had hot chocolate. And we were a good group. And we met for lunch, and we just, it was a good group. So you graduate, and 90% of the people from Central went on to college, and I was held back by my parents, which is in the book. Okay. So Carol and I did not see each other for many, 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 many years. And then I believe, the 20th reunion, you were there.
Yeah.
And we talked.
And you came up to me. And started. And then you told my husband about the football.
I did?
Yeah. And Karen Atsis was there, who was another one of our friends. And I said, she's the one who had the idea.
She's Ronnie's girlfriend at the time, right? Yeah.
Whose girlfriend?
That wasn't his
girlfriend. No, that was Karen. That was Karen Lloyd. Karen Atsis.
Karen Lloyd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Karen Atsis had the idea for the football.
Yeah. So that's good. But then, well, that just shows you, like, I'm very outgoing. Nothing stops me. And my 25th reunion, I skipped 20th reunion. My husband, Jerry, was at that reunion without me. And I had not recognized him somewhere else before the reunion. And he told me he went to high school with me, and I didn't believe him. So I went up to him. I said, "Why are you here?" He was like after me. He wanted me. He said, "I told you we went to high school together." And you start naming the classes we were in and everything. So that was the 20th. And the 25th, I came back and I was married to him. So unbelievable. And I talk about in the book how I was married 3 times, and they were all from the same town, Scranton, and they were all from the same section of town, Southside. How crazy is that, right? Fast forward, 50th reunion, nobody wanted to organize it. Right, Carol? Remember?
Right.
Our class president had disappeared right after high school. We didn't know where
and I warned people about him. I said, he's not going to be around to do anything, but he was very popular.
Charming and charismatic and
handsome. Yes.
So anyway, another member of our class that was in, leadership, she had a tragedy in her life. I think her daughter died. It was, you know who I'm talking about, Eileen. So she didn't want to get involved. Yeah. So nobody was stepping up. Now I was nobody in high school, like nobody. I wasn't in sororities. I wasn't, I said I could do this. So I just started putting the emails out there, and we did our 50th, and that's where Carol and I really connected again, right, Carol?
Yeah.
Spent quite a bit of the night talking
It was great. That
and
was a
looking
great.
at the stars.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, part of it was outside in September. It was getting cold at night, but and the thing I love about Scranton is you can go to the mountains around Scranton and you can overlook the city. And it really is something special. Scranton is a joke to a lot of people, but it's got a lot of good things too.
You hear Scranton a lot. And the thing with Scranton, well, The Office, that was the big thing.
Yeah.
Was in Scranton. And they did name a lot of real places. So, so we connected. And then this book writing came about. And that's how we ended up getting even closer and talking. And she ended up editing for me. Now, Carol, your book is fiction, correct?
Yes.
And remind me, Roadrunners, I believe.
Roadrunners. And I really have to get it out there, but it's because I started it in 2002. All right. So it's old. Yeah. And it's about two people coming together in their 50s. Okay. So, and now I'm in my 70s. So it's
time, girl.
It's different. Yeah. But I told Marie last time we talked, I said, this is how I ended up writing this book. I decided to take a writing class, and I went, and I had taken copious notes after a trip to New Mexico, which has been my dream place. Don't ask me why. There's something. And I should write down the dream I had when I was a child that kind of makes it New Mexico. So, when we were going, we got a nice refund on our taxes. And I said to my husband, you and I are going away, because both kids were going to school and they were out of the house. And he said, oh, we should replace the carpet. I said, no, we're not replacing the carpet right now. We're going to go away.
Yeah.
So we went to New Mexico, and he said, we were thinking of going to Europe, but it was only 10 days. And he said, where do you want to go? And I said, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Taos. And he said, why? And I said, well, it would take too long to explain it, because it's a spiritual thing that's got me going. So I went out there. And I started writing. I started writing about it, and I went to my group, and they said, anybody want to start? And I went, because I do that. Okay, I'll go first. I'm the brave one, right? Right. Right. So I started reading, and I realized, and then finally the teacher said, what are you trying to say? And I said, well, I'm trying to tell everybody how beautiful New Mexico is and how wonderful it is. And she said, okay, let's give somebody else a chance. Okay, So then there was an author there named Jonathan Mayberry. Now, he may not be famous, but I actually did find his book at a Barnes & Noble in Phoenix one time. So he's a writer
out there.
And Jonathan writes things that are kind of like Stephen King-ish. And that's not my style, but I sat there and I listened to him put sentences together. I went, wait a minute, I can do this. Let me make up some characters. So that's when I started making up these characters.
Exactly.
And they're a lot like people I knew through my life. And sometimes the character, like the one character is a combination of several people, and actually the main male character is a combination of several people.
Right.
So I started, and evidently at that meeting, I got to somebody, because weeks later, a guy that was in the class came back, and he was an immigrant. He said, where is this place? And I told him. And the next time he came in, he said, I took my wife there. It was wonderful. So,
be a travel guide.
Well, that's what people want to do. But this book is my love of New Mexico. And that's what it is. And I have a lot of comparisons. A lot of the places in it are places that my husband and I have been.
Yeah.
There's a place in the mountains of Virginia, and I remember being out on a deck watching the stars with him, and that kind of triggered off part of that book. My husband is Jewish, and I remember my first Thanksgiving at his house. So I had a Thanksgiving. She has a Thanksgiving at a friend's house, and I have all these different things. So it's got a cast of characters that come, and it's the one thing about my book is very diverse. Yeah. So that's where it is, but I just haven't gotten around. So right now I'm doing a rewrite, but I have to convert everything to a PDF, and that's been my problem getting it.
I'm going to jump in here because a lot of us have experiences or things that we can, like you said, it's not that hard to write if you, as long as you speak good English and you know your grammar pretty well and you have a good vocabulary and you can find something that inspires you. But then you have to put it out in the world to actually be called a writer, okay? And that's where people get stuck. I would think, Tashina, the first book you did, was it hard to get it published in the beginning?
I think it was harder just taking the concept in of actually being a published writer, because when I first published, I'm a self-published author, and back at that time it was fairly new. And even today, there's a lot of people that don't feel that self-published authors are actually authors. But the biggest difference is that we're just doing it all on our own rather than going through a publisher.
Exactly.
And the unfortunate thing is when you do go through a publisher, there's still a lot that you have to do on your own, like marketing.
Yeah,
is,
so
yes.
Marketing is big. And also editing. My first book, I did not have anyone edit it for me. Excuse me, I have a tickle. So I ended up uploading it a couple times because I would find things later on and then I just correct it and re-upload it. And so it's funny. It's like if you bought the very first issue, I feel bad for you. And there are some people, you'll see the comments of other writers when people buy a book and they'll say, oh, I had to put down the grammar, there was so many errors and da-da-da. So I knew I needed an editor, and that's where Carol stepped in. And can I share a personal fact about you, Carol, and the
Sure.
Okay. Carol was going through treatment for ovarian cancer, and at first I said, can I send you full issues of this new book? I found out my father is 100% Irish. It's like a big reveal for the family. And I researched back to 1700s, and I want to write a semi-fictional history. We're all coughing. Just mute yourself.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. So anyway, I just sent her a couple chapters, and she really liked it, and she made a couple corrections. I think this would flow better, or I think you repeat yourself, like things that I thought, I said, Carol, if you weren't going through so much, I'd have you edit my book. She said, no, I'd love to. And then she told me afterwards, when we were done with the book, that actually it was helpful for her to have something to do to take her mind off the treatments she accumulated. Anytime you want to jump in, you put your mic back on. Okay.
Well, the thing is, you talk about your seventh grade English teacher. My seventh grade English teacher ended up to be our principal at Central High School, Emil Hordesky.
Yes.
And Emil Hordesky was a stickler for grammar.
Yep.
And you not only had to say that the sentence you used a different word because the sentence sounded right. You had to tell him why. So you had to know the grammar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you say it don't or it doesn't, and why do you say it doesn't? Well, because it sounds right. No, that was not the answer. You had to say why.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how I started. And then I was also, when I was in this writers group, after the class was done, a group of us decided to get together, and we had different people coming in and out of the writers group.
Mhm.
That's where I learned the edits.
Yes.
Because people would, and if there was a fact that I knew, like, for example, there's a magazine out called Mother Jones, and one of my if you know who Mother Jones was, you can look her up, but she was a fighter for children's rights, or fighter against child labor. And in one story, that one of the writers named her wicked mother-in-law Mother Jones, and I said, you don't want to use that. And she said, why not? So, if I knew a fact that was a little, I said, you need somebody besides Mother Jones. It just changed the name.
Yes.
So anyhow, that's where I started.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Tashina, you haven't had anyone edit your books at all?
No, I do a lot of my own editing.
You do. Do you get comments on reviews about missing things or?
Not right now. When I first started, yes.
Yeah.
Now,
They'll tell you.
of course, 10 years ago, I've learned a lot, a ton in 10 years, including going to school,
Yeah, they'll tell you.
editing and grammar and all that as well.
Exactly.
So there's a lot that I do know. Now there is something that I would like to do, and it's called getting a sensitivity reader, because they really are able to grasp whether or not you're missing something that you may not notice that you missed on BIPOC people, just sorry, excuse me, everything that deals right, everything that deals in making sure the inclusivity is correct.
Yes. That makes sense. Now, they have that new AI program they're talking about. People are like, you don't even have to use your mind anymore. You just say, write a book on whatchamacallit, and they do it. It's terrible. I mean, things are going backwards as far as I'm concerned in cultivation of culture and things, but all we can do is our part. So we talked a little bit about the editing, the impetus, and the marketing. Yeah, the marketing is social media, period. I mean, seriously, I'm not kidding. I did speaking engagements. I did a couple book signings, and they were nice, but they were mainly people that knew me. Maybe a couple when I went up to Scranton for one came in that didn't, but they had read the book. And social media, I was not on everything, I wasn't on TikTok or anything. And then I started making the little videos, because that's real big, reels they call it, and people upload little videos. And I have my own, the book has its own Facebook page, okay, Raised by Wolves. But, again, now I have another book on there, Unearthing My Irish Roots. So that doesn't, so I'm going to have to change that. There's so much, and you can't do it all. Like, it's a lot. And I think I told Tashina when we were talking the other day, I literally have to say, am I going to do marketing or writing today? So if it's marketing, that's what I'm doing, because it's a different headspace. And if I'm writing, working on the third book, I shut the door, I don't want to be bothered. I have to be in that creative space. So here we are writing, here we are editing, we have to market. And I love it. I could get lost in it. But I have a husband that needs me very badly, helpful. And the other thing we'll talk about too is that I think women right now need to be heard more than ever. That's my opinion. Have either of you saw The Handmaid's Tale or read the book?
Oh, I have not read the book.
I tend not to do that because I get angry.
Oh yeah, well you can get angry just watching the news then, because they are trying to cripple the women again. See it, and it's scary. And I said, Blacks, Jews, women, and gays are in trouble. We're all in trouble. So I'm going to have my voice heard as often as I can about it. And I think, the woman who wrote The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, Margaret Atwood.
Yes. She said, when I asked a group of men what they feared about women, they said, we're afraid they'll laugh at us. And when I asked women what they feared about men, they said, we're afraid they'll kill us. Now that's deep. That's deep. Yeah. But I survived an abusive father and mother, abusive first husband, abusive second husband. And we were talking about someone else, we're talking about domestic violence, and someone that had killed their husband because of it, and went to jail because she did it in a manner that was considered premeditated. Okay. And I told this person, I said, well, there was a time I had a gun in my hand with each of those marriages. It was that bad that I actually had a gun. Didn't use it, but I had it. And in the 70s, they didn't have a lot of protection for abused wives. They didn't have shelters. They didn't. the one policeman told me when the ex-husband, he was an ex, was stalking me and everything. And he said, look, he said, get a gun. Next time, if you're going to shoot him, though, he said, make sure he's inside the house. If you shoot him outside, drag him in. Now, this is giving me advice how to get away with murder. But they didn't protect us. And I fear that's happening again. Because every time I talk to like a young waitress and tell her about the book and what it's about and everything, and they'll say to me, I'm going through sort of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Breaks my heart. Breaks my heart. You know? So what else can we wrap this up? We have a couple more minutes. Tashina, would you, we have about 10 minutes. Would you like to close up your thoughts? Like give us a conclusion of things. What's
Well,
going on?
I think it's not just the situation with the abuse and relationships with women. It's all together, in all honesty. When I stepped away from writing, I went into production work, and that is very largely a male's type of job because of the physical labor that it is.
Yes.
But I was very underestimated by a lot of people, and I actually rose up very quickly into higher positions because of how well I did.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it kind of cut off at a certain point because I was looked over often because of being a female.
In the 70s, we called that the glass ceiling, right, Carol? And we had, Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these women come forward because of that. And they talked about the glass ceiling. And that was in the 70s. And then there was a point in the late 80s into the 90s where women thought they actually broke through the glass ceiling, right? But I think the minute put another one in place. I mean, I really feel that way, but that's what I hear from you. The glass ceiling, you can only rise so far, and then you become a danger. Men don't like you to be smarter than them.
I think that's where it's kind of nice that we have a lot of opportunity now to be heard. We have a lot of channels that we can use for that, as in our writing, our social media. We are able to make more awareness.
Exactly.
And that is a very big thing that is happening now. We do see a lot more women coming out making awareness, which is very good.
Carol, what do you think about that? The whole
well, I was in a basically female profession. I was a dental hygienist, and it was very much so. And we didn't make a lot of money until around 1986, when dentists realized that what we did was finally they realized what we did was important, which they didn't think it was. It was just to get the patients in so that we could find work for the dentist to do. That was it. But now there's so many things related to dental health and physical health. So all of a sudden they realized that people wanted to have physical health in their mouth. And then we started making a decent living.
Yeah.
It was a real shocker because we were making so little before.
We were underestimated in the beginning.
Right. And a lot of guys were coming out of the service, and they had been trained as dental techs. So they would go to hygiene school. And so once you got men in the profession, that was another thing that raised the price. Yeah. It raised the price.
I'm going to stop right there before I run out of time. I absolutely believe that every woman in her lifetime, whether we grew up in the 60s or whether it's now, the male dominance is there. The desire they have to dominate. Also, toxic masculinity, which I talk about in my book, which I knew nothing about until I went through everything. And I think we should have our podcast to be heard and come up with some topics. And whoever watches this, please get in touch with us and let us know if there's something you want to hear about, whether you read any of our books or not, because we love to get fresh topics or find out what is really troubling women today. And again, I'm saying, I just talk to waitresses and they come out with this stuff and I think, oh my God. And I said to them, you're beautiful. You don't need to put up with that, But anyway, this has been, go ahead. I'll let you
What
say
I need
that.
is somebody to tell me how I can start a blog. And we don't want to do that here, but I have to
Do
talk
that.
about that because I have essays, and I did write an essay not long ago on toxic masculinity.
All right, I will end with this. Amazon has something called Kindle Vella, and you can upload one essay at a time, which it sounds like that's what you have.
I have several. Yeah.
And you'll get paid for it because anybody that has Kindle Unlimited can read it, and then you get paid. So look into that, Carol.
Yeah.
I'll get back to it more information.
Okay.
That might be better than a blog. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. It went by too fast, but I have my books back here. I tried to get some kind of a thing, but I've now had my first book Italian, Spanish, Hindi, and English. So I'm excited about that. And audiobook, which Tashina did. Okay, and now we're working on that second book, and I have someone going to narrate that, and we'll see how that goes.
That's good.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to edit. We really appreciate it.
It makes such a big difference, and I can't wait to see the next chapter. All right, bye. I'll see you next month.
All right.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.